Old Hollywood stars who are shockingly related to each other. The glamorous world of old Hollywood seems almost mythical now, a glittering constellation of larger-than-life stars who captivated audiences from the silent era through the golden age of cinema. We think we know these icons through their unforgettable performances and carefully crafted public images, but behind the silver screen's polished veneer lay family connections so surprising that even devoted fans remain unaware of them to this day. Imagine discovering that two of your favorite classic movie stars, performers who seem to have nothing in common, actually shared Sunday dinners as cousins. Or that the dashing leading man from one studio was the brother-in-law of a comedy legend at another. These hidden family ties crisscross the Hollywood landscape, creating an intricate web of relationships that studio publicists sometimes promoted, sometimes concealed, but always managed for maximum career benefit. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on these remarkable family connections that linked some of cinema's most beloved figures. What makes these relationships so fascinating isn't just the celebrity factor, it's how they reveal the surprisingly small world of early Hollywood, where talent often ran in families and career paths frequently intersected in unexpected ways. The connections we're about to explore aren't just trivia. They offer a new lens through which to view classic films and the stars who made them immortal. You'll never watch certain old movies the same way again once you understand the real-life family dynamics playing out behind the scenes. So settle in as we reveal 12 surprising family connections between old Hollywood icons that will change how you see these legendary stars forever. Connection number 1. Loretta Young and Clark Gable's secret daughter. This next entry stayed hidden for 60 years until the daughter herself revealed the truth that shocked Hollywood historians. In 1935, Loretta Young and Clark Gable starred together in The Call of the Wild. Young was a devout Catholic known for her wholesome image, while Gable was married to his second wife, Maria Langham. Their on-location affair resulted in an unexpected pregnancy, a potentially career-ending scandal for Young in an era of morality clauses and studio control. Young devised an extraordinary plan to conceal the truth. She disappeared from public view during her pregnancy, gave birth in secret, and then adopted her own biological daughter, naming her Judy Lewis. For years, Young maintained the fiction that Judy was an orphan she had legally adopted. Meanwhile, Gable never publicly acknowledged his daughter. The secret remained officially hidden until 1994, when Judy Lewis published her memoir revealing the truth about her parentage, nearly a decade after Gable's death, and just 6 years before Young's passing. When confronted by the revelation, Young finally admitted the truth privately to her family, though she never made a public statement confirming it. What makes this connection truly astonishing is that despite being the daughter of two major stars, Judy grew up not knowing her true parentage. She only began to suspect something when classmates pointed out her striking resemblance to Gable, particularly her ears, which were shaped so similarly to the famous actors that Young had Judy undergo painful cosmetic surgery as a child to make them less recognizable. She didn't just look like Gable, she had the ears to prove it, literally. Had Young revealed her pregnancy in 1935, both her career and Gable's might have been severely damaged. MGM had invested heavily in Gable's image as the ideal American male, while Young's contract included strict morality clauses. Their secret daughter represents one of the most dramatic examples of how studio control extended even into the most personal aspects of stars' lives. The 1935 film The Call of the Wild takes on an entirely different dimension when you realize what was happening between its stars when the cameras weren't rolling. Their on-screen chemistry wasn't just good acting. It was the beginning of a family secret that would remain hidden for almost 60 years. Connection number 2. Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine, the Oscar-winning sisters who wouldn't speak. Here's a twist that even Hollywood scriptwriters couldn't dream up. Two sisters who both won Oscars but refused to speak to each other for over 4 decades. Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine were biological sisters, born just 15 months apart, who both rose to become major Hollywood stars and Academy Award winners. De Havilland is best remembered as the sweet Melanie in Gone with the Wind, while Fontaine starred in Alfred Hitchcock classics like Rebecca and Suspicion. Despite their shared upbringing and similar career paths, their relationship was characterized by intense rivalry that began in childhood and escalated as they competed for Hollywood success. The sisters' feud reached its most public and painful peak at the 1942 Academy Awards, when Fontaine won Best Actress for Suspicion, beating out de Havilland, who was nominated for Hold Back the Dawn. Photographs captured Fontaine appearing to reject de Havilland's congratulations, a moment that symbolized their fractured relationship. When de Havilland won her own Oscar 5 years later, she supposedly refused to shake Fontaine's hand. Though accounts of this incident vary, their bitter estrangement continued for decades, with only brief reconciliations. They stopped speaking entirely after their mother's funeral in 1975, and reportedly never reconciled before Fontaine's death in 2013. Studio publicists initially attempted to downplay their sisterhood, fearing that knowledge of their relationship might limit casting opportunities. Joan even adopted their stepfather's surname, Fontaine, to create professional distance from Olivia. Later, as their rivalry became public knowledge, the studios capitalized on it, using their competition to generate publicity. What's particularly poignant about this family connection is that these sisters shared so much, not just genes and upbringing, but parallel career paths, similar roles, and even matching Oscar wins, yet remained deeply estranged. Their relationship demonstrates how the pressures of Hollywood stardom could fracture even the closest family bonds. When watching de Havilland in The Heiress or Fontaine in Rebecca, it's striking to consider that these actresses, who portrayed vulnerability so convincingly on screen, were engaged in one of Hollywood's longest-running personal feuds behind the scenes. Connection number 3. Carole Lombard and William Powell, the divorced couple who became best friends and co-stars. Imagine your ex-spouse becoming your closest friend and then starring in a romantic comedy with you. Here's the Hollywood couple who made it work against all odds. Carole Lombard and William Powell married in 1931, when she was a rising starlet of 22 and he was an established star of 38. Their marriage lasted just 26 months before ending in divorce in 1933. What makes their relationship extraordinary isn't the marriage or even the divorce. It's what happened afterward. Instead of becoming bitter exes, Lombard and Powell developed a genuine friendship and professional respect that led them to co-star in the classic screwball comedy My Man Godfrey, 1936, 3 years after their divorce. Their natural chemistry and comfortable rapport are evident throughout the film, with Powell playing a forgotten man who becomes Lombard's family's butler. The film earned both actors Oscar nominations and remains one of the defining comedies of the era. What's particularly unusual about their post-divorce relationship is how they became each other's confidants and supporters. When Lombard fell in love with Clark Gable, Powell was among the first to congratulate them. Later, when Powell was diagnosed with cancer and his new relationship with Jean Harlow ended with her tragic early death, Lombard provided emotional support during his recovery. But here's the twist no one expected. Powell reportedly helped Lombard navigate her relationship with Clark Gable, the same Clark Gable who, unknown to Powell, had fathered a child with Loretta Young just a year before. Hollywood's relationship web was even more tangled than anyone realized at the time. Studio publicity departments were initially concerned about promoting divorced couples as co-stars, fearing audience disapproval in a more conservative era. However, the success of My Man Godfrey demonstrated that audiences were more sophisticated than studio heads believed. When watching My Man Godfrey today, the scenes where Powell's character resists Lombard's romantic advances take on an entirely different dimension when you realize these actors had already been married and divorced in real life. Their ability to transform their failed personal relationship into a successful professional one resulted in one of the era's most enduring comedies. Tragically, Lombard died in a 1942 plane crash while returning from a war bond tour, cutting short her brilliant career at age 33. Powell was among those who mourned her loss most deeply, demonstrating that their unusual friendship had remained intact nearly a decade after their marriage ended. Connection number 4. Tyrone Power and Laurence Olivier, the unlikely brothers-in-law. This next connection seems impossible. How could Hollywood's quintessential American heartthrob and Britain's most revered classical actor be related by marriage? Yet they were. Matinee idol Tyrone Power, star of swashbucklers like The Mark of Zorro and romantic leads in films like The Razor's Edge, was married to actress Annabella from 1939 to 1948. After their divorce, Annabella later married Laurence Olivier's producing partner, making her a central figure in Olivier's professional circle. Meanwhile, Laurence Olivier, considered by many the greatest actor of his generation and known for Shakespearean adaptations in films like Rebecca and Wuthering Heights, was at one point married to actress Jill Esmond. After their divorce, Esmond married Power's cousin, creating another family connection between the two acting legends. These tangled marital connections meant that Power and Olivier found themselves sharing family gatherings and holiday celebrations, creating an unlikely bridge between Hollywood glamour and British theatrical tradition. Despite their very different acting styles and career trajectories, they developed a mutual respect and friendship that surprised many of their contemporaries. What many don't realize is that at intimate family gatherings, these icons of different continents and acting traditions would discuss craft, compare notes on fame, and even exchange career advice, all while keeping their connection largely hidden from the public. Studio publicity departments rarely mention these connections, as they work to maintain distinct images for each actor. Power was marketed as the all-American romantic hero despite his cosmopolitan background, while Olivier was positioned as the quintessential British thespian despite his Hollywood success. The most fascinating aspect of their relationship is how it illustrated the surprisingly small world of entertainment elites in the mid-20th century. Despite working in different countries and traditions, Power and Olivier found themselves connected through marriage in ways that created unexpected personal bonds. When viewing Power in The Sun Also Rises, or Olivier in Hamlet, it's remarkable to consider that these seemingly different performers, one known for mainstream appeal and physical charisma, the other for classical training and technical precision, were actually linked through family ties that created a bridge between Hollywood and Britain's theatrical establishment. Connection number 5. The Barrymores. John, Lionel, and Ethel. Would you believe that 3 of the most distinctive performers from different corners of Hollywood were actually siblings? The first family of American acting hid in plain sight. John, Lionel, and Ethel Barrymore were siblings who each achieved remarkable success in Hollywood, continuing a theatrical dynasty that stretched back to the 19th century. Their father, Morris Barrymore, and mother, Georgiana Drew, were both prominent stage actors, making the Barrymores America's original acting family. Each sibling carved out a distinctive niche. John became the quintessential romantic leading man, known for his profile so iconic it was simply called the Great Profile. Lionel excelled in character roles, winning an Oscar for A Free Soul, and later gaining a new generation of fans as mean old Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life. Ethel remained primarily a stage actress, but appeared in films like None But the Lonely Heart, earning an Academy Award nomination. Despite their shared lineage, the siblings rarely appeared together on screen. The most notable exception was Rasputin and the Empress, 1932, the only film featuring all 3 Barrymores. The movie's marketing capitalized on this unique family gathering with the tagline, Barrymore, Barrymore, Barrymore. What's remarkable about the Barrymore connection is how different their screen personas were, from John's romantic swashbucklers to Lionel's crusty old men to Ethel's dignified matriarchs. Many casual viewers never realized these diverse performers shared the same parents and childhood. The Barrymore legacy extended into future generations, most notably through John's granddaughter, Drew Barrymore, creating one of Hollywood's longest-running family traditions. From stage to silent films to talkies to modern cinema, the Barrymore family has maintained a presence in American entertainment for over 150 years. When MGM promoted Lionel and John as the royal family of Hollywood, it wasn't just marketing hyperbole, it was an acknowledgement of a theatrical lineage that had already spanned generations and would continue into the 21st century. So far, we've uncovered secret daughters and feuding sisters, but the next few connections, they get even stranger, and in one case, downright dangerous. From Oscar-winning dynasties to relationships that had to be kept secret for decades, the second half of our list reveals how Hollywood's family ties created both extraordinary collaborations and painful sacrifices. Connection number 6. The Hustons, Walter, John, and Angelica, 3 generations of Oscar winners. This next family didn't just work in Hollywood, they conquered it across 3 generations, achieving something no other family in history has matched. Walter Huston began as a vaudeville performer before becoming one of Hollywood's most respected character actors, appearing in classics like Dodsworth and Yankee Doodle Dandy. His son, John Huston, emerged as one of cinema's greatest directors, helming masterpieces like The Maltese Falcon and The African Queen. John's daughter, Angelica Huston, would later establish herself as a formidable actress in films like Preetsy's Honor and The Grifters. What makes the Huston connection historically significant is their unique Oscar achievement achievement. Walter won Best Supporting Actor for The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, 1948, directed by his son John, who won Best Director and Best Screenplay for the same film. Decades later, Angelica would win Best Supporting Actress for Preezy's Honor, 1985, directed by her father John. This makes them the only family with Oscar winners in 3 consecutive generations. But here's what most people don't know. This dynasty almost never happened. John Huston was so determined to forge his own path that he initially avoided filmmaking altogether, trying careers as a boxer, painter, and cavalry officer before finally following in his father's footsteps. His eventual collaboration with his father came after years of establishing his own identity. Their family legacy encompasses nearly a century of Hollywood history, from Walter's early sound films in the 1930s through Angelica's contemporary work. John's directing career alone spanned from 1941 to 1987, making him a bridge between old Hollywood and the modern era. What's particularly remarkable about the Huston family talent is how versatile it proved across different eras and aspects of filmmaking. Walter established himself during the studio system's height. John thrived as both a studio director and later an independent filmmaker, and Angelica succeeded in both mainstream Hollywood and independent productions. The scene in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, where Walter Huston performs his famous Gold Prospector's dance, takes on special significance when you realize he's being directed by his own son, a collaboration that would earn both men Academy Awards and cement their family's place in Hollywood history. Connection number 7, Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, the secret 26-year relationship. For nearly 3 decades, 2 of Hollywood's greatest stars carried on a love affair so secret that it wasn't acknowledged until after both had died, yet it produced 9 classic films. Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy maintained a devoted relationship for 26 years, from their first meeting on the set of Woman of the Year in 1942 until Tracy's death in 1967. They made 9 films together, creating one of cinema's most beloved on-screen partnerships. What most audiences didn't know was that their chemistry wasn't just acting, they were deeply committed to each other off-screen as well. What makes their relationship particularly unusual for Hollywood is that it remained officially unacknowledged throughout Tracy's lifetime. Tracy was married to Louise Treadwell from 1923 until his death, and though they had been separated for many years, he never divorced her, largely due to his Catholic faith and commitment to their deaf son, John. Studio publicity departments engaged in elaborate measures to protect both stars' reputations. MGM head Louis B. Mayer reportedly told them, "Keep it quiet and I'll keep you working together." This arrangement worked for all parties. The studio got hit films featuring undeniable chemistry, while the couple maintained both their careers and privacy. The most heartbreaking aspect of their story? Hepburn demonstrated extraordinary devotion to Tracy, particularly during his final years when his health deteriorated due to heart disease and diabetes. She took a 5-year hiatus from filmmaking to care for him, while maintaining the public fiction that they were merely friends and colleagues. Only after Tracy's death and his wife's passing did Hepburn begin to speak openly about their relationship. Their final film together, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, was completed just weeks before Tracy's death, and features a moving final scene where Tracy delivers a monologue about enduring love while Hepburn watches with tears in her eyes. The scene takes on profound meaning when viewed with knowledge of their real relationship and awareness that both knew it might be their last performance together. Hepburn later said, "I loved Spencer Tracy. I would have done anything for him." Their relationship, though unconventional by the standards of their time or ours, represents one of Hollywood's great love stories, one that played out mostly behind closed doors while they created movie magic together on screen. Connection number 8, Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis, horror's royal family. This mother-daughter connection created a horror legacy so powerful that it spans from Hitchcock to Halloween, linking iconic scream queens across generations. Janet Leigh became eternally associated with horror films after her iconic shower scene in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, 1960, despite having a varied career in musicals, dramas, and comedies. Her daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, would later cement the family's horror legacy by starring in Halloween, 1978, launching both the slasher genre and her own career. What makes their connection particularly fascinating is the unintentional genre legacy they created. Curtis was initially reluctant to pursue acting and had no intention of following in her mother's footsteps, especially not in horror films. Yet her debut role in Halloween directly referenced her mother's work. Director John Carpenter has acknowledged casting Curtis, partly because she was the daughter of Psycho's famous victim. But here's the twist that even devoted film fans might not know. Curtis initially turned down the role in Halloween, wanting to avoid being compared to her mother. She only accepted after multiple actresses rejected the part, inadvertently launching her career in the very genre that defined her mother's most famous moment. This created a unique meta-narrative across horror cinema. The daughter of Norman Bates' victim became the archetypal final girl who survives her own encounter with a masked killer. This connection wasn't lost on horror fans, who appreciated the generational symmetry between Marion Crane's vulnerability and Laurie Strode's resilience. Unlike some Hollywood families who downplayed their connections, Curtis has openly embraced her mother's legacy. In a touching tribute, she even recreated her mother's famous shower scene for the TV series Scream Queens, acknowledging the unusual horror legacy that links them. Their family connection spans the evolution of horror cinema itself, from Hitchcock's psychological suspense to the slasher boom of the late 1970s and beyond. Curtis's return to the Halloween franchise in recent years has extended this legacy across 6 decades of horror filmmaking. When watching the shower scene in Psycho, followed by Curtis's scenes in Halloween, you're witnessing not just 2 landmark performances in horror history, but a mother-daughter contribution to cinema that neither could have anticipated when Lee stepped into that fateful bathroom at the Bates Motel. Connection number 9. Tippi Hedren and Melanie Griffith, Hitchcock's muse and her daughter. This next connection might be Hollywood's most dangerous family legacy, a mother and daughter linked by both genetics and their terrifying experiences with powerful men and actual lions. Tippi Hedren was a model discovered by Alfred Hitchcock, who cast her in The Birds, 1963, and Marnie, 1964, making her an instant star. Her daughter, Melanie Griffith, would later establish herself as a leading actress in films like Working Girl and Something Wild, creating a bridge between classic Hollywood and the modern era. What makes their connection particularly interesting is how it illustrates the evolution of women's roles in Hollywood across generations. Hedren's career was largely controlled by Hitchcock, who reportedly became obsessively possessive of her. When she rejected his advances, he allegedly used his power to damage her career. Decades later, Griffith emerged in a Hollywood where women had more agency, though still facing the industry's persistent challenges for female performers. But here's the truly shocking part of their story. Their most direct professional collaboration came in the unusual big cat thriller Roar, 1981, produced by Hedren's then-husband, Noel Marshall. The film featured their actual family alongside dozens of untrained lions and tigers, resulting in over 70 injuries to cast and crew, including a scalping, gangrene, and multiple maulings. Griffith required facial reconstruction surgery after being attacked by a lioness. This dangerous production represents the most extreme example of how Hollywood family connections can lead to unusual, and in this case, life-threatening, creative collaborations. In a strange twist of Hollywood fate, both mother and daughter found themselves typecast in roles that emphasized their sexuality, Hedren as Hitchcock's cool, untouchable blonde, and Griffith as the sensual free spirit in films like Body Double and Something Wild. This parallel demonstrates how certain patterns in Hollywood's treatment of actresses persisted across generations. The most poignant aspect of their relationship may be how Hedren used her difficult experiences with Hitchcock to advise her daughter about navigating Hollywood's power dynamics. "I told her to be careful of men in the industry," Hedren later recalled. "I'd experienced a director who was a complete tyrant, and I didn't want her to go through that." When watching Hedren in The Birds and Griffith in Working Girl, you're witnessing not just 2 talented actresses from different eras, but a mother-daughter legacy that spans from the tail end of the studio system to the corporate Hollywood of the 1980s. Connection number 10, Kirk Douglas and Michael Douglas, different stars for different eras. This father-son dynasty represents a complete transformation in Hollywood masculinity, from the square-jawed hero to the morally conflicted anti-hero in just one generation. Kirk Douglas, with his distinctive cleft chin and intense performances, became the quintessential tough guy leading man of the 1950s and 60s in films like Spartacus and Paths of Glory. His son, Michael Douglas, emerged in the 1970s as both a successful producer, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and later as an actor known for morally ambiguous characters in films like Wall Street and Fatal Attraction. What makes their connection particularly interesting is how they represent the changing definition of leading men across Hollywood eras. Kirk epitomized the rugged, straightforward masculinity of post-war America, while Michael explored the insecurities and moral compromises of men in the late 20th century. Their careers almost function as a barometer for how American masculinity evolved on screen over decades. But here's what most people don't know. When Michael produced One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Kirk had spent years trying to adapt it as a starring vehicle for himself. When Michael's version won Best Picture with Jack Nicholson in the lead role Kirk had wanted, it created a temporary rift between father and son, a passing of the torch that wasn't entirely voluntary. Unlike many Hollywood dynasties where the second generation struggles to emerge from the first's shadow, Michael established himself first as a producer, winning an Oscar for producing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest before fully committing to acting. This strategic approach allowed him to build his own identity before directly competing with his father's legacy as an actor. Their relationship wasn't always smooth. Kirk was initially hurt when Michael produced Cuckoo's Nest after Kirk had spent years trying to adapt it as a starring vehicle for himself. However, they later reconciled and maintained a close relationship, with Kirk living to the remarkable age of 103, long enough to see his son's career flourish over decades. The Douglas family legacy now extends to a third generation, with Michael's son Cameron also entering acting, creating one of Hollywood's most enduring family traditions, spanning from the studio system to the streaming era. When comparing Kirk in Spartacus with Michael in Wall Street, you're witnessing not just a family resemblance, but how Hollywood's portrayal of powerful men evolved from physical dominance to psychological complexity, a transformation that mirrors broader cultural shifts in American society. Connection number 11. Francis Ford Coppola and Nicolas Cage, the name-changing nephew. How far would you go to avoid being seen as riding your famous relative's coattails? This next star changed his entire identity to escape his uncle's shadow. Director Francis Ford Coppola, the visionary behind the Godfather trilogy and Apocalypse Now, is the uncle of actor Nicolas Cage, though many fans of both have no idea they're related. Born Nicholas Kim Coppola, Cage deliberately changed his surname early in his career to avoid the perception of nepotism and establish his own identity. What makes their connection particularly interesting is Cage's determination to forge his own path. He chose his new surname as a tribute to comic book character Luke Cage, signaling his pop culture sensibilities, quite different from his uncle's more classical artistic references. Despite the name change, Coppola did give his nephew one of his first significant roles in Rumblefish, 1983, where Cage appeared alongside several other Coppola family members. But here's the wild part. Cage's decision to distance himself from the Coppola name led him to develop one of Hollywood's most eccentric and unpredictable acting styles, almost as if to prove he wasn't just writing family connections to success. His uncle's meticulous classical approach to filmmaking contrasts dramatically with Cage's often unhinged, risk-taking performances. The Coppola family represents one of Hollywood's most extensive creative dynasties, including Francis's daughter Sofia Coppola, director of Lost in Translation, sister Talia Shire, Adrian in the Rocky films, and numerous other relatives in various aspects of filmmaking. Cage's decision to distance himself from this family name highlights the complicated dynamics of Hollywood dynasties. Despite their different approaches to cinema, Coppola's meticulous craftsmanship versus Cage's more unpredictable risk-taking performances, they share a willingness to push boundaries and pursue personal visions rather than safe commercial choices. This shared trait suggests that while Cage might have changed his name, he inherited his uncle's artistic fearlessness. Their most significant professional collaboration came with Peggy Sue Got Married, 1986, directed by Coppola and featuring Cage in a supporting role with an infamously unusual high-pitched performance. The film represents a rare direct collaboration between uncle and nephew after Cage had established his independent identity. When watching Cage's wildly experimental performances in films like Wild at Heart or Mandy, it's worth considering how this approach relates to his uncle's own battles for artistic control throughout his career, suggesting that creative independence runs in the family, regardless of surnames. Connection number 12. Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli, the mother-daughter Oscar nominees. Our final connection reveals Hollywood's most poignant mother-daughter legacy, a torch passed from one legendary performer to another, despite tremendous personal struggles. Judy Garland, immortalized as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz and star of countless MGM musicals, was the mother of Liza Minnelli, who would emerge from her mother's shadow to become a formidable triple-threat performer in her own right. Minnelli was born to Garland and her second husband, acclaimed director Vincente Minnelli, in 1946. What makes their relationship particularly notable in Hollywood history is that both mother and daughter achieved the rare distinction of Oscar nominations. Garland received 2 for A Star is Born and a Juvenile Oscar, while Minnelli won Best Actress for Cabaret in 1973. They are one of the few mother-daughter pairs where both achieved this level of critical recognition. But here's the heartbreaking reality behind this glittering success story. Their relationship was complicated by Garland's struggles with addiction and mental health issues. Minnelli often found herself in the caretaker role from a young age, witnessing her mother's professional and personal challenges firsthand. In a cruel twist of Hollywood fate, Minnelli would later face her own battles with substance abuse and health problems, echoing her mother's struggles in ways that went far beyond their shared talent. Studio publicity initially tried to downplay Minnelli's connection to Garland when she was establishing her career, fearing she would be dismissed as merely Judy Garland's daughter. Minnelli worked hard to establish her own distinct performance style and persona, eventually succeeding so thoroughly that younger generations sometimes discover her work without initially realizing her famous parentage. The most poignant aspect of their relationship may be that Garland never lived to see her daughter's greatest triumphs. She died in 1969 at age 47, just 3 years before Minnelli's Oscar-winning performance in Cabaret would firmly establish her as a star in her own right. When watching Minnelli perform Cabaret or New York, New York, attentive viewers can detect echoes of Garland's emotional vulnerability and powerful delivery, genetic echoes of a talent that passed from one generation to the next. These surprising family connections reveal much more than just Hollywood trivia. They offer unique insights into how the entertainment industry functioned during its formative decades. The studio system, for all its control and manipulation of stars' images, couldn't prevent the natural human tendency to form relationships, marriages, and families, even among its most carefully managed celebrities. What's particularly striking about these connections is how they crossed studio boundaries in an era when performers were typically contracted exclusively to a single studio. While MGM might have owned a star's public image, they couldn't prevent them from falling in love with or being related to someone at Paramount or Warner Brothers. These personal connections created bridges between competing studios in ways that sometimes complicated carefully crafted publicity narratives. These relationships also reveal how talent and artistic sensibility often run in families. From the Barrymores to the Houstons to the Douglases, certain families demonstrated remarkable creative continuity across generations, suggesting both genetic predisposition and the powerful influence of growing up immersed in the craft of filmmaking. At the same time, many performers struggled to establish identities separate from their famous relatives, leading to complex family dynamics played out under the glare of public scrutiny. Perhaps most significantly, these connections humanize figures who often seem more like myths than people. Knowing about Carole Lombard and William Powell's remarkable post-divorce friendship, or the complicated bond between Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli, adds emotional dimension to their performances. These relationships remind us that behind the glamorous facades were real people navigating the same complex human experiences we all face, just on a more public stage. While today's celebrities live in an era of social media transparency, where relationships and family connections are difficult to conceal, old Hollywood stars operated in a system where studios had unprecedented control over personal information. This makes discovering these connections all the more fascinating. They represent the human reality behind carefully constructed star images. For classic film enthusiasts, understanding these relationships adds new dimensions to familiar performances. Watching Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine in their respective films takes on additional resonance when you know about their rivalry. Similarly, Tracy and Hepburn's 9 films together become even more compelling when viewed with knowledge of their off-screen relationship. These family connections also challenge our tendency to view old Hollywood stars as isolated icons. Instead, they existed within complex webs of relationships, professional, personal, and familial that influenced their careers and creative choices in ways both obvious and subtle. The romantic triangle connecting Clark Gable, Carole Lombard, and William Powell, for instance, affected film choices, performances, and public personas in ways audiences of the time couldn't fully appreciate. As we continue to celebrate and study these legendary performers, their family connections provide valuable context for understanding both their work and the industry that shaped them. They remind us that behind every silver screen legend was a person with parents, children, spouses, siblings, and extended family, just like us. Clark Gable never publicly claimed his daughter. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn never shared a red carpet. These connections weren't just trivia, they were secrets, sacrifices, and heartbreaks that made Hollywood human. Old Hollywood may seem distant now, its stars more like mythical figures than real people, but these surprising family connections remind us of the very human stories behind the glamour and the performances we continue to cherish decades later. They create a more complete picture of the golden age of cinema, adding personal dimension to our understanding of these legendary figures. Next time you watch a classic film, consider how the stars' family connections might have influenced their performance or career trajectory. Would Liza Minnelli have become the performer she did without Judy Garland's influence? How did Kirk Douglas's success shape Michael's approach to his own career? These questions add rich new layers to our appreciation of their work. We could have easily included many other fascinating Hollywood family connections: the Fonda dynasty, the Redgrave family, or the surprising relatives of stars like Hedy Lamarr or Rita Hayworth. Which other old Hollywood family connections fascinate you? Drop a comment below to share your favorite surprising Hollywood relation or a connection you'd like to learn more about. If you enjoyed this exploration of Hollywood's family ties, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the golden age of cinema. Until next time, keep those classic films rolling, and remember that behind every icon was a person with a family just as complicated as yours.